Hey guys, welcome to Bible Book by Book. We're going to be talking with Alice, and I've got Esther with me as well, talking about the book of Esther.
Well, I'm buzzing that you're here on the podcast with us this week. So we are looking at the book of Esther. Quite fitting that we have an Esther with us. But you guys, what do you think of the book of Esther? What are some of the things that you're like, oh, I really love that. That's something that stood out to me. What do you guys think?
Especially, I feel like one of my favourite parts of this book is when Esther's just like, if I perish, I perish. Like, just her bravery, like, throughout the story, and her obedience to not only the king, but Mordecai as well. Like, I feel like you can relate that to, like, when, like, you're raised in a household, like, raised up with some, like, certain values, and then you go to uni, and it's just, like, whether to keep those values or, like, you know, change yourself. And, like, Esther's completely kept, like, all her values when she was in the king's house, even though she didn't have to.
Yeah, so she was, like, so brave and, like, faithful. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, this story has kind of been a part of my life, my whole life. Like, I was named after her, you know. So people always, like, compare me, like, you're gonna be like her, born. I think the most key verse in the whole of the book is that you're born for such a time as this. And I think that that's all applicable to all of us, because, like, God has placed us in the situations that we are in now to spread his glory and to make his name known. So, like, we are all born as for such a time as this, and we all have a part to play in his story. So yeah, that's what we can learn.
I think that's really cool. Like, love that, like, bravery and faithfulness of Esther, but also the, like, just the security that she was, like, God had planned and positioned her for such a time as that time in history. And I wondered whether, obviously, we aren't living at the same time that Esther was about, but actually you guys are teenage girls. You'd be roughly the same age that Esther was or is in this story. And I wondered, like, what's it like being a Christian as a teenager in school, college? Like, how do you have to be brave? How do you have to choose to be faithful? How do you encourage yourself that you've been placed there for a reason? Do you have any, like, stories or things that might encourage people listening?
I feel like it's definitely easier for me to be a Christian in college than secondary school was. I didn't have as many Christian friends as I do now, and I'm so grateful for that. And I feel like it's just easier to be, like, there are many different types of people in college, and you just get to be more of yourself, show more of God through your day-to-day lives and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Whereas, like, at school, it was kind of hard to you even had to be brave just to speak up, saying that you are a Christian. And I used to get, like, lots of questions and things like that would be kind of hard for me to explain, and hard for me to kind of, it's like you have the pressure of like, you have to represent God, like, in this situation. But I do think, like, just be able to say you're a Christian. I remember a couple of years ago I did one of the youth videos that was I Am Second, and I remember in my RE class I talked to my teacher. I was like, can I please show it? And then so I showed it, and then those people just had lots of questions because it was like my testimony. So people can't really take away your testimony because it's your story. So that was just a really good time of just showing people why I believe what I believe, and the miracles that have happened to me in my life. So just being able to step out in those little situations. It doesn't have to be you shouting from the playground like, Jesus, come. Like, but just being able to just tell your friends that you go to church or things like that can just be a little glimpse of the bravery that Esther showed in this book.
And I think that, like, that's so right, isn't it? Often it's through relationship that people see the realness of your faith, isn't it? Like, they see you in not just the moments where you're in front of loads of people, but they see you in the times where you're comforting them as they're going through, like, difficult situations in their life, or perhaps your attitude towards a challenge at school or in college, or perhaps even your, like, how you guys approach exams. Like, do you think that perhaps because, I don't know, is that different, the way you approach your exams compared to your friends that don't know God? Like, what?
I definitely feel like I have more confidence in, you know, doing well in exams and my friends, but at the same time I feel like I care about exams more than my friends in general.
Really?
Like I place a lot of importance in them and stuff like that, and probably just stress about them a bit more than other people. So it is kind of both ways. It goes
Both
like
ways.
Yeah, me personally I would stress more, but as a Christian, like I don't stress as much. So it's just, you know, I don't know.
Do you think that like you then stress about exams because you want to do well, but you don't necessarily find your identity in your exams?
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
Because we know like our identity's in Christ, and like no matter how well we do on exams, or it doesn't matter, because God has a plan for us. So even if our plan that we give ourselves doesn't seem to work out, that doesn't mean that God's plan will ever fail. Like he knew that this would happen, like, you know, so we can rest in that, and we can have more peace in those situations.
And I think that kind of links into another key thing that we see in Esther, right? So God is not mentioned once at all in the whole book, and yet he is working out his plan behind the scenes. And like I just wonder, like, do you have any stories or any moments where you can look back on your life and see, do you know what, at the time I didn't know what was going on, but with hindsight now I see, God, you were working something out there. Like,
yeah, I think I recently got employed at M&S, and a couple maybe like 6 months ago, I interviewed for McDonald's and I got rejected, and that's not like very common for you to get rejected from McDonald's. So I was just like, oh, like I was getting like so many rejection emails, like I was not getting a job, and I was just like wondering why, and I did not want to work at McDonald's. But like I feel like I found like a really good, well-paying, like like M&S takes really good care of like their workers and stuff like that, and it's like when I like got rejected from McDonald's and all of the other companies, I was just thinking like, you know, like I need a job, like, you know, and I didn't even think that, you know, God would get me a job as good as this one. So yeah,
that's cool.
And she was praying for it a lot, I remember. She was praying for it. I think in Esther, like the thing that stands out to me about that links to God is just like she went through all these beauty treatments, and she had to go for like a year of these just to approach the king, just to spend like a little bit of time with him. And like this just like reflects us, like we don't have to go through all these different things just to approach God, because now we have Jesus. Like we don't have to change our whole selves, we don't have to become perfect to actually have a relationship with God, and that's just something that's just amazing, because like I definitely struggle with thinking like, oh, that God fully like loves me for who I am. So just knowing that I don't have to do all of that for God to care about me is just amazing. Like
and that whole thing of like God really does care about his children, and like we are children of God, and so he cares about us. And there's that lovely verse, isn't there, in Matthew, where it's like, if he think of the lilies and the sparrows, if he sustains and feeds them, how much more will he clothe us and give us all that we need. And actually, like, God does work things out, doesn't he? And we see that in the story of Esther, of God working and weaving through conversations, through the positioning of Mordecai, hearing conversations, and favour from Esther. You know, I'm sure there were so many women that wanted to be the queen, but it was Esther that was chosen. And that sense of God just being sovereign over all things and being sovereign over our lives, and that brings us security and means that we can trust in him in the difficult moments. But also it kind of, we get to choose to be a part of that too, don't we? You know, we get to opt in. That verse in Esther 4 talks about that deliverance might come from another place, but what if you were made for such a time as this, that actually we get to choose to be in. Like, it's not just that we are, you know, God says, oh, you do this and we do it. It's, because we know that God is sovereign, because we know that we're living for something so much bigger than ourselves, we get to choose to give our lives to being a part of what he's doing.
And just like reflecting Jesus in that like
Yeah.
tiny way, like even Esther, like when she went to the king, she was at risk of death because if you approach the king without his permission, then he can just kill you, you know. So she risked herself for like the greater good and for other people, in the same way like Jesus did that for us as well. Like he risked his life.
He gave his life.
He gave his life. He didn't just risk, for us. And so like what more can we do to like reflect that is just to listen to his will and to be obedient, to be part of his will, really.
And I think that whole scene of like that I don't even know what they call it, but like the scene where Esther kind of comes into the courts of the king, and he extends the scepter and says, you can come, you can have whatever you want. There is that, like, in that, through Jesus dying on the cross, like he has made a way for us to have relationship with God. It's like if God is the king and we are Esther, that scepter is Jesus and his death and his resurrection, and like we now get to have relationship, we get to come close, we get to be known, we get to be like really cherished and loved by God. And I wonder, like, what do you guys think about that? How do you spend time with God because of what Jesus has done for you? Like, what does that look like in your life?
Just making sure I'm always like putting him into all of the little aspects of my life, and just like not just, you know, like reading the Bible in the morning and shutting it and then like going about my day as if like, you know, God is just for the morning. Like it's just like always remembering him in like different aspects of the day. And also what you said about the story, I just wanted to mention like how what was it, the king extended the gold scepter. I found that like he kept saying in the one of the verses was just like I'll grant to you whatever you want, even if it's half the kingdom. He said that like 3 times. And I just like, I feel like even the little things of just like the love that the king had for Esther and like the appreciation he had for Esther as well, is not just the fact that like God put Esther in that position, but the fact that Esther found favor with the king. And I just wanted to mention that because I found that, like, you know, anything that she wanted she could have, and she used it to help her people. Yeah, that's so true. Like, how often are the things that we go to God about us and about ourselves and about how often are they me focused? And isn't there a challenge in that of like Esther went before the king to plead for her people, to plead for others, to there was a bigger picture that she was aware of. And it kind of challenges us when we go to God. Do we make it all about ourselves, or do we focus it on actually like, God, you are so much bigger than just my life?
I think like the only way to respond really is just through worship. Like I went to Big Church Day Out this weekend. And that was just amazing to worship with like the people that like wrote the blessing, like Carrie Job and stuff, like 30,000 of us just worshipping in a field, like all for one name, all from different denominations and everything. I think that was just an amazing experience, and I think that's what we should be doing daily in our lives, like with our lives, and not just singing, but like worshipping him, and like giving ourselves as well as an offering for his will. So
that's really cool. Girls, what a great chat we've had. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for listening. Next week we'll be in the book of Job. If you want to comment